Today I wanted to talk a bit about how it is that we got started on this project, why it matters so much to us. I worked for a number of years for ACT in Iowa City. I was director of writing assessments, and a few years back, my team and I were charged with redesigning the ACT writing test, the portion of the ACT that prompts students to produce an essay. And so we worked for a long while coming up with a new design for that assessment. And then we needed to field test, pilot that new design. And so a colleague and I flew around the country to a number of schools and to try it out. One of the places we went was a school in Tucson, Arizona. This was a school that was 90% Latino and Native American, and they let us work with a whole high school, with a whole classroom full of seniors, and also with a smaller little breakout group of about 8 or 10 students. And with that smaller group, we got to sit down with them and get to know them and talk to them and ask them questions about their lives and about their academic experience and their futures. And man, those were just the best kids. They were just outstanding, so bright, so engaged, so eager to help us, so excited about their futures. They were all planning to go on to college, whether it was ASU or community college. So interesting as people. So after a while, we administered the redesigned test. Students sat with it with the prompt for half an hour and generated an essay. Essays came back, and none of that sparkle in these students came through in their writing. You couldn't tell how bright they were, how interesting they were. They had removed themselves, all signs of themselves as individuals, from the essays that they produced, because that's how they'd been trained to write. And in thinking about why that was so, it makes a lot of sense, because writing for these students was in many cases just a hurdle to get over so that they could get to the next place that they wanted to go. They had to learn to write for an accountability test, a timed writing for an accountability test, for example, so they could get their high school diploma, or they needed to write in a timed environment for a college entrance test. And so they needed to figure out what would allow them to jump that hurdle, what was expected of them, something very pedestrian, something very bland, something not provocative, something that they could produce in a half an hour, something that would meet the demands that they imagined that their readers would have, so that they could pass and get on to the next thing. They didn't realize really that writing could be so much more, and would be when they got to college, that they would have opportunities to write about those things that they cared about, that they shared with us. They wanted to talk about Mexican rap. They wanted to talk about what it was to be a Latino kid growing up in Tucson. They wanted to talk about the difference between their lives and the lives of their cousins on the reservation. They wanted to talk about the differences they encountered between that boys and girls encountered in school, and all kinds of different things. They didn't really understand that those were all legitimate academic subjects that they would have an opportunity to explore and think hard about and take a position on and communicate effectively through their writing. These were the kind of students who would get to the college classroom and be completely surprised and by what they were asked to do, and unfamiliar with the task that was put before them. And so when I left ACT, that's the problem that my wife Becky and I decided we wanted to take on. How could we get more students prepared for the kind of writing that they would encounter in college? Because writing is the academic skill most linked to their success across disciplines. And so it seemed an important contribution to helping more students succeed in college. So that's why we created College Ready Writing Essentials. That's why we're working so hard to get it into high schools now.